Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the MoShowLive. I am really excited about tonight's show. Got a new time tonight, excited about that, and really excited about tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is a longtime high school friend of mine, and really excited to share his story and the story of his career with everybody. I think it's a great message, and not only is his story a great message, but it's a great message that there's opportunities out there for others that we can learn and see. So, we live in the greatest country in America. America is the greatest country in the world. And the reason it is because of the freedoms and liberties we have. We can have disagreements about certain things, but the great thing about our country is that we have these freedoms and liberties that are out there. And the reason that we have these freedoms and liberties is the men and women of our military. These brave men and women protect us when called to do so. And I'm excited to share tonight's guest with you and to tell his story and a little bit about his background in the military and a little bit about military life. And for those of you that may have an affinity, or you have children or grandchildren that may be thinking about joining the service, then our tonight's guest is definitely going to touch on that. So tonight's guest is Army Captain Jodie Minor. Jody is a native of Carrollton, Alabama. We both grew up in the same small town. Jody enlisted in the Army in October of 2004. He holds a Bachelor's of Administration's degree from Athens State here in North Alabama. He's got an associate's degree in intelligence operations. He has an MBA from Alabama A&M here in the Huntsville area. He also holds a master's degree in legislative affairs from George Washington University. He's currently serving as a Congressional fellow to Congressman Robert Aderholt from here in Alabama. And he's got a litany of great awards and recognitions, but just a couple of them, folks. He's received the 2015 and 16 Adjutant General's Court Regimental Officer of the Year Award, and he received the Lieutenant General Timothy J. Maud Medal for Distinguished Achievement. So I'm really excited to share Jodie's story and the Army story with everybody. Jody, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but thanks for making time tonight. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Morris. I'm happy to be able to share my story and talk about some of the opportunities and benefits that the military has to offer.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I'm not, Jody and I reconnected here in Huntsville when he was stationed here. And then, certainly me and my family were sad to see Jody leave off for another duty, and I'm really glad to connect with him again through tonight's show. Kind of give us just a little bit of brief background, Jody, for our audience that are watching, a little bit about your background growing up, what your passions and interests were before the military, and then, then we maybe kind of talk a little bit about your military career.
Okay. I think kind of to put this into context, it would take you back to our small town of Carrollton, Alabama. And when I put it into perspective for people that I talk to, as I've traveled to different duty stations, I compare it to my graduating class size, which was about 30 people in my graduating class. So to put that into perspective for people out there, a very small town, everybody knew each other. And, in high school, I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to play basketball. And I also played football as well, but was an all-state basketball player my junior and senior year, and had the opportunity to go on to play collegiate basketball at the University of West Alabama. That experience ultimately led me to Athens State University and graduating with my Bachelor's of Business Administration from there. And really at that point, I thought that once I graduated from college and that I had a degree, that I was just going to get a job being an HR manager somewhere. And as life, life has it, it didn't quite happen that way. So and one of my best friends who passed away about a year ago, Derek Childs, had offered me an opportunity to go work for Title Max. And that experience led me to Huntsville, Alabama, where I opened up the Title Max locations there in North Alabama. After I did that for about 6 or 7 months, I was at a point to where with that job opportunity and, what that job entails, that wasn't for me. Growing up, my mother had served in the military. My aunt served in the Air Force. And so it was always something that was on my mind serve because of their service. And so I went to a recruiting station one day in 2004, around September, October, and I told the recruiter that I wanted to join the military. And so in joining the military, I was like, well, there's no way that I'm going to go unless I go in as an officer. And for people out there that don't know much about the military, so the difference between being an enlisted soldier and an officer is I would just, basically I would take a company like McDonald's. So you have the employees up front or in the back that are working for a manager. So your officers are typically would be your managers, and then the enlisted soldiers would be at a lower level, would be the ones that are doing the heavy pulling and the heavy work. So I said that I wasn't going to go in unless I was going to go in as an officer. I already had a bachelor's degree, which is a requirement to be an officer. And when I went to the recruiter told me, say, well, you know what? You don't want to go in to be an officer. You want to go in and you want to be enlisted. I can get you in the Army, in a few days. And he said, if you want to go in and be an officer, it's going to take you a long time to do that. And so I was just thinking, well, I want to do something different. And so I said, all right, well, let me go down to MEPS, and if you can offer me some benefits, I'll join. I want to be an HR soldier in the Army because I had a degree in HR. And, at the time in 2004, they were offering enlistment bonuses. And so I was like, well, if you can get me a job in HR, and if you can give me a bonus and repay the little bit of student loans that I had, that I would join. So I went down to MEPS in Nashville from Huntsville, and I sat down and I talked to the recruiters at the MEPS station, and they said, well, if you want to be HR, we don't have any bonuses for HR. And so, I had my red line. So I said, I told my recruiter from Huntsville, I was like, I told you that I was only going to do this if you offer me a bonus and if you allow me to go in as an HR specialist. And so I said, well, just take me back home. So I got on the phone and I talked to my Aunt Sherry, and I said, Sherry, they won't offer me what I want, and I'm ready to go home. And they're offering me these different jobs, and they offered me this Intel job. They said it's like James Bond stuff. And so she was like, what? They're offering you a job in Intel? That's a wonderful job. You need to take that. And I also took the advice of Frederick Guyton. You know Frederick Guyton, and he's still serving in the military now. And I was influenced by him and his advice. And so I decided to take the opportunity with a 3-year contract and a high grade bonus at the time of $20,000 and repaying my student loans. And coming in as a specialist, I decided to join the Army. That experience, my first duty station basic training was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina in October of 2004. By the time we got there, it was hot. Everybody's screaming and yelling at you, and what basic training really does is it takes everybody from all different parts of the United States and in other countries if they're U.S. citizens, and they allow them to be put down to the most basic level, and everybody's basically equal. So you go in, you all get the same haircuts, and it's all done for a reason because they want to build you into a soldier. So at the time, I didn't quite understand it, but then, in establishing, discipline and installing leadership skills, I feel that it's the right way to do it. So from basic training, a big culture shock and change for me because traditionally soldiers that come in the Army, they're mostly coming out of high school. They're 21, 19, 20, 21 years old, but I was 24 years old and kind of had a mid-career job. And so it was a little bit of a shock for me from that perspective, but I knew what my goals were, and I just stayed focused on my goals. And so, and I mentioned the climate and how it was hot in October, but by the time January rolled around, it was freezing cold. And so, being from Alabama and not used to that and staying outside for a few days, it was a life-changing experience. But that basic training experience and graduating in May of 2004, I wouldn't change that experience for the world. After basic training at Fort Jackson, I went on to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, to do my advanced individual training to become an intelligence analyst. and from that training, my first duty station was at Fort Hood, Texas. And so when I got to Fort Hood, it was around June of 2005. My unit was getting ready to deploy to Iraq at the time, to Baghdad. And so for the job duties of an intel analyst before you deploy is basically this similar to what a personnel security manager does, that's doing background checks and that's taking applications for individuals that need security clearances. In addition to that, you're also doing kind of some threat analysis on what the enemy's doing deployed. You're also, what they kind of joked around me about is we were the weatherman, because one of the things that we do is we also track the weather and determine how the weather impacts soldiers on the ground. So we deployed to Iraq in around October of 2005. And initially we were going to Baghdad for a year. And this was during the surge when there was a lot of sectarian violence, a lot of Syria, the insurgents were, killing innocent civilians. And so the police stations that we were responsible for, I was in a military police brigade, we were responsible for going out to the Iraqi police stations, conducting training with those Iraqi police stations, and also determining the body counts for the innocent civilians that were being killed. And as an intel analyst, deployed, what I was responsible for was providing route analysis for those routes that our soldiers were going to be driving up and down to determine where the high threat areas from IED attacks, improvised explosive device attacks were occurring at, and also determining the threat from the police stations, because we all know that even though they were Iraqi police, some of them weren't necessarily on our side. And so just providing an intelligence assessment based on what was going on on the ground. And so while I was deployed, one of the opportunities as an intel analyst that you have is to brief the colonel that's in charge of the organization, which is a pretty big deal for a specialist at the time. And my roommate knew that I had a degree, and he talked to the battalion commander. He was the brigade commander's driver. And so he told the brigade commander that I had a degree. So one day the brigade commander called me in and he was like, "Hey, Jody, I heard you had a degree. Why don't you consider going to officer candidate school to be an officer?" And at the time I was like, "Sir, I'm engaged, I'm getting ready to get married, I decided that I was going to do 3 years, and I'm working on my master's degree with the Army's tuition assistance program that pays for your education while you're on active duty." I said, "I'm working on my master's, sir. This is, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to get married. I'm going to be a personnel security officer for a 3-letter agency, FBI, DIA, DEA," and that was really what my plan was. And so he made a statement to me, and it sticks with me to this day. He said, "Well, Jody, what are your friends doing back at home now, and what were they doing 3 years ago?" And I said, "Well, sir, they're out and they're doing the same thing." He's like, "Well," and so he was like, "Well, I tell you this, you go to officer candidate school, and if you don't like it, you have the experience of being an officer, you have 3 more years under your belt, and you're more financially secure than you are now." And so at the time, I was also eligible to re-enlist in the Army. So deployed and re-enlisting, at the time, they were offering around $20,000 for an intel analyst. So I re-enlist for another 3 years on my enlistment contract, and I did some research, and know that if I was going to go to officer candidate school, I have to repay that bonus. So I re-enlist, and then I submitted my OCS packet, and that was and so I ended up going to officer candidate school in 2008. And one of the things, I say that all things happen for a reason. I always wanted a job in the Army and HR. And at that time in 2008, the requirements for HR officers had increased significantly. And so, I'm pretty fit and so everybody's like, "No, you're going to be an infantry officer, you're going to go out." And I was like, "No, I'm going to still put HR as my number one choice." And just so happened that the Army needed HR officers at that time. And went to officer candidate school in 2008, and then was fortunate enough to be selected as an HR officer and actually went back to the same unit at 89th MP Brigade to be the brigade's HR officer. And so from that point, when I got there, we were getting ready to deploy again. And so actually deploying to the same location in Baghdad, but unique in this time from going over from being enlisted and to being an officer was a bit of a difference. You have more responsibilities. You're responsible for human resources management for 1,400 soldiers, which is, at the time I was just a lieutenant. I had, just became an HR officer, and one of my mentors at the time, Chief CW4, Chief Warrant Officer 4, Marion Millette, brought me in at the brigade and really taught me everything I knew at the time as an HR officer. And deployed again and ended up being assigned to our higher headquarters and was responsible for doing HR for a joint unit of over 15,000 soldiers. And so,
Wow.
And that experience, at the time was kind of the climax of my career. And so, but that was kind of the beginning phase of my career. And I went on to be an aide de camp for Cadet Command, which is responsible for the Reserve Officer Training Corps at the universities, and also responsible for the the JROTC programs that are in our high schools. And so I was an aide for a general there, and then from there, that's when we reunited in Huntsville. I was assigned to 2nd Recruiting Brigade as the company commander for their brigade headquarters, and then from there to Fort Carson to be an HR officer again for a Special Forces unit, and from Fort Carson to where I am now as a congressional fellow working for Congressmember Robert Adderholt.
Well,
so that's kind of a snapshot of my 13 years in the Army.
Wow. Well, it's really amazing to see that, how, you basically, it sounds like you, not long after enlisting and getting through basic and initial training, then you were thrown into a foreign overseas conflict in the war on terrorism. And that's, knowing where you came from and doing, and then how quickly that changes from working in a Title Max and then just shortly thereafter, you're thrown into a foreign conflict like that. Jody, before we move on to the next subject, I want to thank everybody that's joining us. We've got a whole lot of people that have been watching us and really appreciate everybody's feedback. Anthony Hardnett, Jim Hacking, Eric Jarrell, Don Sanchez. We've got other folks that have chimed in. Our former Kelton friend, Talisha McNeil, Lisa Wilson, Natasha Jernigan, Pam Hill, Amber Matthewson, Daniel Clark, Bernard Nomberg, Jody McGee. We've got a whole list of folks here. I really appreciate everybody listening in to tonight's show and to hearing Jody's story, and look forward to talking a little bit about the military career from a perspective of, what opportunities that it really has afforded you, but that it can afford other young people. But before I kind of move on to that, Jody, I'd really love for you to tell just a snapshot. When we were talking the other night, kind of talking about the show, I was really impressed with the fellowship program that you're working in now. Can you give us just a brief snapshot of what that program is and how you got selected for that? Sure.
So the Army's every year the Army has what we call broadening assignments, and so one of the opportunities, of the many opportunities that you have for broadening assignments is at a certain point, based on your rank, is to apply for the Congressional Fellowship Program, and really there's 3 different phases of the Congressional Fellowship Program. The first phase, and you mentioned that during the intro, is the master's degree program at George Washington University. That started for me last April, and I graduated May of this year. The second phase of the program actually starts during the first phase. So in January, I started working in Congressmember Adderholt's office, represents the 4th Congressional District of Alabama. And the way the selection process works, there's 25 members on the list. And so, when I applied for this program, I said, well, if I get selected, there's only 25 soldiers in the Army that's going to be selected for this program. If I'm going to be one of the 25 selected, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be ecstatic. And the second point was that if I was going to be selected for the program, if there was going to be a member from Alabama that's on that list of available office to serve in, that I was going to put that Alabama member's office first on my list. And so that's how, and no one else from the other 24 members, or the 24 fellows that were selected, didn't have Mr. Adderholt as their number one choice. So I knew I had a good chance of going to his office. And Mr. Adderholt actually used to represent Pickens County. And a few years back, his district kind of was realigned, and now it's kind of part of Tuscaloosa County, and kind of goes up, for those that don't know, it goes up along the west coast, Lamar County, up north, and then it kind of goes across the state to the eastern corner, and then Mo Brooks represents mostly the northern Huntsville and over towards Florence area. And so to me, it's just from being in Mr. Adderholt's office, it's just been an honor and a pleasure to serve in the House of Representatives on behalf of the constituents of Fourth Congressional District. It's just been an experience that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Mr. Adderholt's a senior member in the Congress. He's based on seniority there's 435 members in the Congress. And he's seniority. He's ranked around the 60th ranking member in the Congress, so he's pretty senior. Been in the Congress for about 20 years. The staff is a senior staff, so going in and obtaining, learning about how the legislative process works, and learning from people that are really experienced, that have the members of constituents of 4th Congressional District at their heart and at their best interest. And every day we just go in to do the work of the people from the district. And so that's the second phase of the program, is being in a Congress member's office, and that's for a year. And the third phase of the process for me starts in January of 2018. And for the Army, all things that we do that they do that's good, that's very rewarding. They also have the utilization part of it, where they reap the benefits of the resources that they're giving to you. So in January, from January of 18 to around January of 2020, I'm going to be working in the liaison office at the Pentagon. They're kind of dependent. There's 5 different options on where I can go, but more than likely working budgetary issues for a specific program. So I could be working the personnel portfolio for the Army and how it pertains to the Army's budget. And so kind of technical in detail, but the third phase of the program, I'll be working in a legislative liaison capacity in the Army. And so on a regular basis, and what I do now is I'm in a business suit every day, but I thought that it was important for people out there that don't necessarily see service members in uniform every day to put the uniform on and kind of to dust it off and put it on, so that anybody that's out there watching can kind of see what the uniform looks like.
Yeah, well, that's really impressive, Jody, and I know that you and your family and all of us are really proud of all your accomplishments thus far, and being selected for this fellowship program is truly a great accomplishment, and you have that to be proud of. And I know you're doing the best you can to represent the district and help Congressman Adderholt represent his district, and you're going to take the things that you're learning on to your next phase of the program, and certainly further your military career. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining so far. Again, if you got questions, please leave them in the comments. Jody, we've got a lot of comments, people just telling you hello and reaching out and thanking you for your service, and I certainly join in with them. One thing I thought that I gathered from you and getting to know you and reconnecting with you when you moved to Huntsville was that I think you really take to heart what the military has offered you, and the great career that this has afforded you, and the opportunities that it's afforded you from an education standpoint and a career standpoint. So I thought, it would be kind of cool to touch on a few things that we could share with the audience from your perspective of military life and a military career. And I know that, as you mentioned earlier, that you were part of the recruiting brigade here in Huntsville, so that you've kind of worn that hat as well. I mean, kind of initially, if someone, if we've got a young person watching from recording here, or we've got a mom or a grandparent or father that says, maybe this could be an option for my child or grandchild. When someone's thinking about the military, what opportunities are there for them, and specifically types of jobs? Because you've mentioned here HR and various types of things that you've been involved in here. But I assume, but I don't want to assume, that there are various careers that people can have an interest. If you've got an interest in logistics or technology or the medical, that you can branch into those things within the military, can't you?
Sure, exactly. So before I answer that question, so yeah. I'm speaking, on my experience in the Army. I know we're talking about military service, so
Sure.
so when I talk Army for the audience out there, just to let you know, the opportunities that are available in the Army, they're similar in the other branches of the military as well. And so for the Army, there's over 150 jobs. Really pretty much any job that you can almost think of in the civilian sector. There's almost something that correlates to that in the Army and in the military. So I'm an HR officer, and there are other opportunities that you can pursue. Physical therapy, engineers. We have combat engineers that go out and they build stuff. We have statisticians. The degree in mathematics is one of those areas that you can look into. There's environmental sciences, there's veterinarians, there's veterinary technicians. I mean, there's a limited amount of opportunities that we have in the Army. And, depending on, for someone that's considering joining, there are bonuses that are associated with some of those jobs that you are able to receive, like I did when I joined back in 2004. But the bonuses are pretty based on what the needs of the Army are. But once you're in the Army, you have the tuition assistance program, and I mentioned that program as when you're on active duty, whether you're enlisted or you're an officer, depending on specific circumstances. But for the most part, an enlisted soldier comes in after he serves in his first duty station for at least a year. He can take advantage of the tuition assistance program. And this program is no money out of the soldier's pocket, up to about $4,000 a year, just to pursue a degree, or even a technical specialty, kind of depending on which technical specialty it is. Once you're in the military, of course, you have the healthcare benefits, the dental benefits. You also have now you have a 401k type retirement. And so in the jobs that we mentioned, there's over 150 of them. 99% of those jobs have civilian credentialing certifications associated with them. So that's from my perspective, and what some of the opportunities and jobs that are available, and how someone that may want to consider joining, and some of the opportunities that are available.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that I take out of that, Jody, is somebody kind of from the outside looking in, is that, if you have a child or a grandchild that is looking for options for a career, but maybe they have a certain leaning towards one type of career or the other, there's almost certainly the Army has, and probably the other branches as well, but the Army, from your perspective and your experience, is probably going to have a niche or a fit for them in that. So, wherever they are, that they can look into that.
And the main thing with that, it would be to talk to a recruiter, to take our entrance test. We call it the ASVAB. Take the entrance test to kind of see what your scores are. And those scores, based on, it's not just, the math, the comprehension. There's also technical aspects to the test that will determine which job fields are best suited for you. And so while I say, we all have our own personal goals in the military, but then the Army we have an Army mission as well. So the best thing to do would be to talk to a recruiter. And like I did before I joined, talk to somebody that's in the military. And that's really kind of what I did, is talk to somebody that's in the military that you respect. And at the time, Frederick Guyton was the guy that I talked to. He had been in the military for a few years, and he was the guy that I talked to, that I kind of picked his brains to kind of figure out whether the military lifestyle was, or if I could, convert or transition to a military lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I think that's great advice for anybody that's looking. And the other thing I can share from my personal perspective is school's expensive, and going to school is very expensive, and student loans can certainly be a big burden on people that are looking to go to school, and to have the opportunity through your job in the military to be able to get additional education and schooling and certifications that can benefit you not only, and I want to hit on this in a minute, not only during your military career, your Army career specifically here, but it can also benefit you in retirement in your civilian sector career, having that education and background, and not only the training and things that you've done practically in the military. Jody, also wanted to kind of give a quick shout out to Ron Sullivan, Gene McBride, our former high school English teacher, and everybody for joining us. We got a lot of people still watching. We appreciate that.
So Morris, while we're on education, I got some notes that I really wanted to highlight, just strictly based on education. So if we're going to leave education, I kind of wanted to highlight a few points of what the Army has done with respects to education, if you don't mind.
Sure, go right ahead.
So last year alone, almost 7,000 soldiers graduated with degrees. That are on active duty, almost 7,000. Over $162 million spent on tuition assistance last year alone. Also, 890,000 veterans used benefits last year. I know we're gonna get to that point. So those are some of the highlights that, based on some notes that I had that I looked at, and I was like, wow, that's kind of mind blowing that, an active duty component of, just a little bit over 1 million soldiers, almost 7,000 received graduate degrees last year alone while serving in the military.
That's pretty cool. And I think it speaks to a lot of areas. That speaks to that as a good opportunity for the military. I think that speaks to the makeup of our soldiers, that not only are they looking to serve in the capacity that they're already in, but they're looking to grow and develop so they can move up in either the rank or move up in the advancement of their careers in the military and after the fact. I think that's a really tremendous stats that show what opportunities there for people potentially going into the military, and their benefits and reasons for going in. But it also really speaks to our current service members, and that they are surely striving to better themselves, which is only to their benefit, and certainly to the benefit of our great country. The other things that we were talking about there is service and translation into the military sector. For people here that live in parts of the country where there's a big military base like we are in Huntsville, I know a lot of my friends, a lot of people in my Rotary Club, I bet half of my Rotary Club out of the 65 members are former military people at various branches. And now most of them now work, as you know from being here and being in other military bases, now work in the civil defense sector somewhere, in the defense, working for people who are usually on a contract with the government. But tell people what, and I'm sure that something that's in the back of your head at some point when you retire, but that what opportunities are there, that how this first career for you and for a lot of people can set people up for a second career.
Sure. So from the date that you join the Army, you're a leader. You're trained to be a leader. So that's one of the things that I think that's different from the civilian sector is from day one, there's somebody looking up to you, and then you will be placed in positions that will allow you to gain experience and to become a better leader. Another attribute that you get is you learn some problem solving skills that are a little bit different challenges that we deal with in the military than what you do in the civilian sector. So the veterans the soldiers that are leaving our military to become veterans have excellent problem solving skills as well. They also are some of the people that go back into the community. They're the ones that are advocates for our military. We know that less than 1% of the people in the United States actually have served in the military. And so going back out into the community to be an ambassador for the military to help us recruit is also something that's very, very important for our military services. every year there's actually about 250,000 service members total that are leaving the services, that are going back into communities, that are out mentoring, that are mentoring kids, that are out doing good work like the work that you're doing, Mars.
Well, I appreciate that. But I concur, like I said, to really highlight that a lot of the great people that do a lot of great things in our community in Huntsville are former military people, and they have a passion for helping others and a passion for putting others people's interest and needs in front of theirs. And that really shows in our communities, and those people provide a great backbone for giving back. And I know you have a passion for that as well. I thought one of the last couple things I wanted to hit on before we wrap up tonight was, you've been in since 2004. What do you think, so far? What do you think the highlight, or the most exciting thing, you've seen and done so far? And do you have anything you're kind of looking forward to on the horizon?
Yeah, I think, from being a junior officer, I was a second lieutenant and deployed in charge of HR initially for 1,400 soldiers, and then moving up to a higher headquarters where I was responsible for 15,000 joint service members, working for, at the time, Major General Quantock. He's the IG of the Army now, Lieutenant General Quantock. I was the HR officer for his organization. And really to have that responsibility, as a second lieutenant, I was 27 years old, and I had a lot of learning. What the Army would do, the Army would put you into positions based on your potential. And a lot of times in the civilian sector, you're put in positions based on your expertise and what you know at the time. So I was placed in that position and performed extremely well, and really just helping out, providing HR services and support for joint service members, and from learning about how Army HR operations work to learning how the Marine Corps HR operations work to the Navy. It was a challenge, but it was something an experience that was very rewarding for me. And another one that would probably be being recognized as the HR Officer of the Year for my Corps. Was out of the people that submit an application, and for the captains, I was still a captain, but captains apply for the program, for the award, and really I think there were about total about 500 or 600 captains, HR officers. So to represent a large body of HR officers and be recognized was also one of the highlights of my career. And I know that you said a couple, but then also being selected for the Congressional Fellowship Program, where you're one of 25 soldiers in the Army that are selected to represent the Army on Capitol Hill. So those will be three of the highlights for me.
Wow, that's truly awesome. I know, all your family and all of our friends back home are certainly proud of you, and really, it's really awesome to see what you've done in your career thus far, and we're certainly excited to see where you're going in the future. The last thing I would kind of say is we have with all the fights abroad and things that are going on. Fortunately, there's been a lot of sense of pride in wanting to help the military and give back to our Army and do. For people like me, myself, who may not be in, active duty or reserves or something like that. But if somebody wanted to give back to the local service members or give help or support, any suggestions on what we could do as civilians to kind of support our troops and do any things that you've seen in your experience that you may think is better than others?
So the main thing that I would say, I mentioned that less than 1% of the people in the United States actually have served in this uniform. One thing I would recommend is to go up and talk to a soldier. If you see a soldier in uniform, to get to know us. A lot of people think, and I thought the same thing, because you see somebody in uniform and you think that they're different, but we're no different from anybody else. I mean, you know me, Morris, and so we're no different from anybody that's not in this uniform. So one, I would say to get to know a soldier, and also to become an ambassador, just like what the veterans that go off of active duty, to become an ambassador for our services, so that our young kids, the ones that don't know much about the military, so that they can be influenced by that. So one of the challenges that we have in the military is we just don't have the population pool to recruit from. And so there's different elements to that. Is one element of it is that 50% of our youth know little or nothing about our military. And so in that's why, it's critically important for kids to see adults, engage in people when they see us in uniform, getting to know us, and then also to encourage kids, and I understand, if you join the Army after 9/11, you're joining the service, not just the Army, but you will be joining the service in a time of war. But there's no other sacrifices that you can do than raise your right hand and to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So that's one thing is for adults to get out, to get to know, to greet people, service members when they see them in uniform, and also to get to know them and also to influence our youth to actually consider the military as an option. The second part to that would be to support our junior ROTC programs that are in our high schools and in our middle schools. The JROTC programs and what they do, a lot of people think that those are recruiting tools, but for the military, the goal for JROTC, the motto is simple: is teaching young people to become better citizens. So, and if the kids decide to join the service, that's great. There's also, they receive, additional benefits for joining if they were in JROTC. But what JROTC does is kind of similar to what the military does. It teaches you leadership skills. It teaches you effective communication skills. It teaches you writing skills. It teaches you problem-solving skills. So it also, teaches you about the importance of physical fitness. So I would encourage parents, if there's a JROTC at your school, at your middle school, to encourage your kid to at least do it for a year, to at least learn about the military. You take military history classes to at least do at least for a year to learn about, what the service is and to gain some of those skills that will be beneficial to the kids when they go back out into society, whether they're in uniform or whether they're out of uniform.
Well, that's great advice. I really love those suggestions and getting to know, your service members in your area. If you see somebody, just, go up and introduce yourself and certainly thank them for their service, but get to know them and to know who they are and the person behind the uniform. And I think you can, form a friendship and a bond like we have and get to know that person. But I really do really like the junior ROTC suggestion and information, because I really think we have a loss of civics in our society now, and I think that there's pride in our country, and I think that is there. And then certainly something that I know you've obviously gathered and that some people gather from sports in some arenas is teamwork and leadership and hard work and overcoming adversity. And I think that junior ROTC, I'm sure, provides a lot of those great attributes to our youth. Jody, I want to thank you so much, one, for your service, and I want to let you know that we've had so many people, expressing those same things to you, to thank you for your service to our country, and that we're really proud of you for all you've accomplished. And I want to thank you for your time tonight. And if anybody wants to get up with you, if they've got questions can they connect with you on social media, through Facebook or Instagram or something? If they have a child or grandchild that may be considering service, would you be available to maybe give some feedback if somebody wanted to talk to you on that?
Of course, I'll be more than happy to provide whatever advice that I can give. I'm always more than happy to do that and to be a resource and a mentor for those that need help. And but at the end of the day, Morris, what the goal is for me and what the goal is for the military. And I talked about what the goal was for JROTC is to have better citizens, to have successful citizens in society, to make our world a better place. And surely, what you're doing for March for Dimes, your tips for Mo, the MoShowLive, whatever platform that you may have for people that are listening, to use your platform to make our country a better place. And I want to thank you, Morris, for having me on. And also, I want to thank everyone out there for their support and for listening in to the show. And I'll finish by saying that, none of the things, you mentioned my resume and the things that I've done, but none of these things would have been possible without God in my life, and without him being my guidance and being the shining light for me. So none of these things would be possible if it wasn't for my faith in God and for all the things that he's done for me.
Yeah, well, I know that, and we're certainly proud of you, and that you please like and share the show so other people can see the recording and get to know Jody's background, and to share the Army and military story here, that what an opportunity this is for our youth, that there's some great opportunities for them if they want to join the Army or military that can allow them a really great career path and to do great things in their life. Jody, thanks so much, and I hope to connect soon the next time you're down this way.
All right, thanks for having me, Morris.
See you. Take care, my friend.